Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Chess World Cup 2023. It's time for the final, and it is a historic one at that. Praggnanandhaa of India, the youngest ever World Cup finalist at 18 years of age. He has defeated the number 3, Hikaru Nakamura, number 2, Fabiano Caruana, ranked chess players in the world, and now his final boss, Magnus Carlsen, who is playing in his first ever World Cup final. You cannot script this any better. I'm going to show you their game today. I'm going to show you the third place match today, but it's also a special day for another reason, and that's because it's my wife Lucy's birthday. So I already told her I love her, but I'm going to tell all of you that it's her birthday and that I love her here as well, and you should all wish her a happy birthday. And before we jump into the games today, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Surfshark. Surfshark is a VPN, which allows you to encrypt your connection.
Encrypt your connection to the internet so you can browse it privately and anonymously.
Do I really start all my ads the same way? Well, then you probably already know you can use Surfshark to log into sensitive portals, like for your job or for banking. You also may know that using a VPN to change locations on your streaming service will allow you to watch certain shows that are no longer available in your home catalog, like The Office, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, whatever you watch. Or you probably already know my favorite, you can use Surfshark to buy airplane tickets from a different location and save money, because those airlines charge different things depending on where you buy from sometimes.
Yeah, and Surfshark is available on unlimited devices. Did you tell them that yet?
He's right. Folks, as always, if you're interested in Surfshark, click the link in the description and you'll get 83% off and 3 free months. But wait, did you know that that's just for the basic plan, Surfshark Starter? They also have Surfshark One, which comes with antivirus and alert. And then there's also Surfshark One Plus, which does everything that One does, but you also get Incogni, which protects your data on the internet. So whatever plan you choose, you should still choose Surfshark. Now let's get back to the video. Thanks, sponsored Gotham, my friends. When you go to a nice restaurant, what do you get served? Nothing. You get served air on a plate, and they charge you $200 for it. But first, you get served an appetizer. It could be a nice restaurant, a bad restaurant. You gotta start with an appetizer, and here it is. This video is gonna have 2 chess games. If you don't have the attention span to last for 2 chess games, that says a lot more about you than it does about my content. I'm just going to say that. By the way, book back there. Pre-order links in the description. UK, y'all get 25% off right now. It's in Spain as well, and it is definitely in the US. If you're in Europe, check it out on Amazon. D4 from Nijat Abasov versus Fabiano Caruana, and then we have an absolute banger of a matchup coming up after this. I mean, my God. Knight F6, Knight F3, D5, and in this position, Nijat Abasov against Magnus Carlsen played the dreaded, the feared, the notorious London system. But not in this game. In this game, Nijat Abasov went for a Queen's Gambit. He played the move C4, which is really weird why he starts with this move order. Like, he could just start with this move order, but he really likes to play Knight F3 because I guess it makes his opponent commit one of the pawns. Anyway, Fabi plays E6. We have a Queen's Gambit decline, and now it's up to White to decide what you're going to do in this position. Are you going to play the 2 knights? Are you going to play the Catalan? What are you going to do? You're going to play the Catalan. Okay. Fabi thinks for a little bit, plays Bishop E7. You will remember that Fabi played something against Prague. Do you remember that? No, you don't remember anything? That's fine. You don't have to remember anything. He played a really sharp line against Prague in the classical chess portion, and then he was like better, and then it was it was a good game. Bishop G2, castles, now DC. So Fabi actually plays the exact same thing. And the Catalan meta is that Black can either keep it closed or take and say, do your worst. And White is basically saying, if you take my pawn, I'm going to try to win it back with a variety of different, approaches. I will put my pieces in a way that will restrict you. I also have the opportunity to take the entire center or utilize my very powerful bishop. Basically a long battle of, will White prove an opening advantage, or is Black mega giga Chad, as grandmasters say. A6. The first idea, if you take right away, B5. Long time ago, this has already been proven to equalize for Black. There is absolutely no advantage here whatsoever for White. So the meta nowadays is to stop B5 by playing A4. And now the meta is to play Bishop D7 and Bishop to C6. Or rush that process and play B5 right away. There are a bunch of crazy lines where actually Black is equalizing after the move B5 right away as well. But okay, Bishop D7 is the move chosen in the game by Fabiano. And now Bishop to C6. This is the same exact approach that he took against Prague. Now Bishop G5. In that game, I think bishop f4 was played, and then Fabi played bishop d6, and then it was like queen c1, and he like tried to and basically Fabi took here, and then put his knight on c6. It was it's kind of a weird position. It was like not exactly this, but kind of this. It was like knight c6, and if you play e3, there was like a g5 in there. Very, very weird opening. But Nijad plays bishop g5. So we're not going to get any of that. We have knight d7, knight c3. Now Fabi asks where the bishop is going. The bishop goes back to that desired f4 square. You may ask why white went here inducing this move. Now the pawn on h6 could potentially be a target. So you could use the pawn as a battering ram. That's called a hook. A pawn that's left in front of an opponent's territory that you could use as an entrance point by either trading or sacrificing is called a hook. Bishop d6 played by Fabi. And now the queen drops back to the d3 square, and Fabi trades and plays a5. You'll notice that Fabi's really not thinking. Neither is Nijad. Nijad has played 14 moves without thinking whatsoever. Now, at this point, Fabi could play queen e7 or knight b6 or try to get developed. This exchange simplifies down the position. White gets doubled f-pawns, but could potentially have a powerful attack brewing over here. And maybe it was time to strike right away. Because after, for example, take, and knight takes b5, which looks like a free pawn, black is creating some very meaningful pressure on the queen side that is probably just going to lead to equality, which is what I said is, the meta. But Fabi plays a5, which is kind of a slow move, and now Nijad plays king h1. So he spends 5 minutes, and he goes here. Listen, when a guy plays king h1, he's got one thing on his mind, okay? And it's very nefarious. He's just, men are only interested in one thing, and it's mating. Checkmating. King to h1, rook to g1, and I mean, Fabi's potentially going to come under fire. Now, as you see from the eval, the attack is nothing right now. And now Fabi takes. That's a big decision, and that's why he spent 4 minutes. Okay. Clearly, Fabi didn't like something. I think Fabiano was like, look, if Nijad gets this and then, gets to play knight e5, we're still going to trade bishops, but the way we're going to do it is I'm just going to help him. So rather than helping his knight get to e5, why don't I just get rid of this? And by the way, remember I just showed you? He did that against Prague as well. He took on f3. So it's clearly a common idea in the position. All right? That didn't happen in this game, but instead he took the knight like this and basically said, I'm going to block out your light squared bishop. And Nijad played rook g1. Nijad has played 17 moves, and he hasn't spent a whole lot of time. And now Fabi plays king h8, stepping off of the g file. Now multiple moves exist. You could try to take the center. You could probably double. Like, I would probably play rook g2. But Nijad plays e4. Also not spending a huge amount of time. Black could play something like knight c5, but as long as you don't take and hang your queen, you're going to be in good shape. Now it's Fabi's turn to think of how to deal with the incoming avalanche. But clearly he set this up because he knows what he's doing. Queen e7. But now rook g3. So the best move here for black was apparently knight g8. I mean, that's... And the idea is here, the knight goes to e7, white doubles, black plays rook g8, and basically just sits there and says, I'm not losing. And Fabi plays queen e7. Very simple approach here by white, which is doubling the rooks on the g file, which is like the entire thing that he did. And now Fabi plays rook g8, and Nijad plays e5. So, I mean, like, white's position is playing itself. Now Fabi has to retreat the knight. He retreats it toward the king to meet f5 with, knight g5 and also knight e5, which is why Nijad plays this move, enabling the move f5. Now Fabi can play f5 himself. He can also potentially play queen b4 to put pressure on this. And if white tries to bulldoze, you just take. And if white plays something like bishop h5 attacking this, you can go here. It's ugly, but it does the job. But knight b6 is what Fabi chooses. Nijad plays bishop to e4. I mean, it's very clear what Nijad wants. He would like to, put a lot of pressure here. And now Fabi needs to respond. I mean, he can play f5 if en passant, knight f6. If he doesn't en passant, there's not going to be an attack. Or pawn to g6. Or even, queen d7 attacking the pawn from this angle. But Fabi goes here. And suddenly he realizes something. The threat of the bishop on the knight was not to take it. It was just, you know, to enable this. But actually it was. Because as it turns out, that allows the knight to go to the middle. Nijat does not have to protect this pawn. If this, knight g5 is the killer. If king h8, knight f7, if takes, the king is walked into the center of the board, well, center of the action, and checkmated. Knight to e4, and Fabi has to play king h8. He can't find his bearings, plays queen e7, and Nijat just plays f5. This was one of them, and Fabiano resigns the game. He resigns the game because this opens the door for the queen, and after pawn takes, there is just knight f6 check. And if you take, you get queen sacked! And you get mated, ladder mated in the middle of a game with no queen or no knight. What? f5, ef5 leads to knight f6 check and you can't even take it. And if king h8, the same problem. And rook g8 is mate after you take with the second rook. Fabiano Caruana just played like 4 or 5 moves in a row, completely underestimating the attack, and Nijat Abasov has still, has still only lost to Magnus Carlsen. He just beat the number 2 ranked player in the world, who is now the number 3 ranked player in the world, I think, because of the ratings. But, oh my God, who is this man? This is ridiculous. He just beat Fabi like it, I mean, Fabi, I think it's just, first of all, I think it's hard to play a third place match. Like, you know, you already made the candidates. They're not even playing for anything because technically the winner of this match would make it to the candidates, but they're both going to make it to the candidates because Magnus isn't playing the candidates. He told me. He DM'd me. He was like, bro, your hairline is terrible. Also, I'm not playing the candidates. So Nijat Abasov takes a 1-0 lead and Fabiano has to win tomorrow. Here it is. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening. Any UFC fans? Fighting out of the blue corner, we have Praggnanandhaa. I don't know how much he weighs or anything like that. This is a huge match. Once again, let me read off a couple of statistics to you. Praggnanandhaa last year went viral for beating Magnus in the online rapid tournaments. He is not the number 1 ranked player in India. It's Gukesh, but he is probably the most popular young chess player in India, which is saying a lot because India carries over 1 billion people and over like 120,000 people were watching this match live on YouTube. On one channel, combined probably in the 200 or 300s. Pragg is the youngest World Cup finalist ever at 18 years of age. Pragg is now the 3rd youngest candidate player ever because he qualifies for the candidates behind only Bobby Fischer and Magnus Carlsen. Hopefully he ends up more like Magnus than like Bobby. And this is Magnus Carlsen's first ever World Cup final. So like it's like, you know, it's like Mbappe versus Messi. Not really. I don't know who is who. But, you know, that's what it is. Pragg plays the move c4. So it's going to be a banger of a game. It's going to be a banger of a match. And Gukesh could not beat Magnus. So let's see if Pragg can beat Magnus. This is the battle for the future of chess. We have an English. Magnus actually spends 2 minutes on his first move. He wasn't late. He just was trying to kind of get into the zone and probably... The other thing is they've also trained together. Pragg has trained at Magnus's training camp. There's photos. Magnus gave Pragg a pat on the shoulder after he knocked out Hikaru. Like, he respects these young Indian players. He respects Pragg. I don't know if he's done any training with Gukesh. I'm sure he respects Gukesh. But, so we have a 4 knights. And now White has the option to play e3 or g3 or e4 or even a3. And he plays g3. Now, you will notice Magnus is actually thinking a lot. In this position, he probably could have gone for e4, which is this kind of new edgy gambit with pawn to c6. It's a very, very sharp line, and I think it was simply too risky. There is this kind of very goofy line here, h5, and black is trying to equalize while gambiting a pawn, but instead we have knight c6, d5, which is the most principled move. Of course, here you can also play bishop to b4, and Magnus plays the sharpest way. And now bishop g2, and now Magnus plays a weird move. He plays a really weird move. So, in this position, the most common move by far by black is to get out of this sniper and play knight b6, f6, bishop e6, bishop e7, very, very solid line, and then it's up to white to kind of instigate on the queen side and try to prove an advantage. Or you can play bishop c5. That's also gotten very popular nowadays. The move that Magnus plays in this game, I have never seen in my life because I feel like it's just a stupid looking move. It's obviously not. I'm saying it looks stupid. He goes back to the square where he just was. They say, okay, well, what's the difference between Rishi? Well, the difference is, why would you do that? Why would you develop, take the center, and return to where you, like, you're not even going there, where you can at least, you know, fight for equity on this, in the center with the other knight, and maybe this is fine. I don't know. You know, maybe this is really not that bad. You don't need to fight for the squares on the queen side. In fact, Magnus has played this once before in the year 2020 against Jan Nepomniachtchi. And here white can play d3, castles, blah, 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 a3, b4. Pragg plays b4 right away. That's gangster. That is a gangster move. In fact, he plays b4, which has only been played 2 other times, and one of them was against Magnus. In the year 2020, Jan Nepomniachtchi played the move b4 against Magnus to try to instigate with the move b5. And if you take with a knight, I get this. I open up my bishop. Your knight can't return home. And if you take with the bishop, I take the pawn. I open up the bishop. The knight can't return home because if you take, queen a4 check, and I actually win back my material like this. And black's structure is very bad. In that game, Magnus played a6. He prevented Jan from playing b5, and then it was like a3, bishop d6, bishop b2, blah, blah, blah. I don't remember the game. I just saw it before I made this recap. In this game, Magnus allows the move b5. He says, you know what, Pragg? Go ahead. Do your worst. Pawn to b5. Instigating against the knight. Now the knight can move because the bishop guards the center pawn, and Pragg plays queen a4. You'll notice that Pragg has not spent much time. He clearly knows this position. This is somewhere in his notes. Putting a lot of pressure on the knight here, so it has to take. Think about the fact that black has now made 10 moves. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 60% of black's 10 moves have been with knights, and one of them doesn't even exist anymore. I would say this is a win. Black is still trying to prove equality. He plays a6, because if pawn takes, rook takes is a nice approach by black. Pragg plays d3. Getting this bishop out, you can't take because of the pressure here. The bishop is going to have to develop at some point. h6 first. Let's stop Pragg from developing his bishop to the active square. So he goes the other way. Goes the other way. Tries to trade off that bishop. The rooks are going to come here, play on the b and c files. And he's going to, you know, you'll notice that Pragg has now spent all of his time advantage on castling and all of this. So rook b8. Pragg takes. Magnus takes with the c pawn. Interesting. Now with the queen. Brings a helping hand here. Maybe wants to take a center majority. Also wants to use the open c file. Pragg plays rook b1. Magnus takes. And basically the imbalance here is these 2 pawns. If they get traded, it's going to be a draw. Pawns on the same side. D, E, F, G, H. Queen b6. Pragg offers a queen trade. Trying to move forward. If you take, I have pressure here. Very unpleasant for black. Black's going to have to kind of counterattack. So instead of that, Magnus seals the pressure. Now, if you take like this, then I'm going to take. And if you take like this, I'm actually just going to win your knight. So that knight, like, you got to be careful. You got to... LPDO, loose pieces drop off. I think Daniel Naroditsky says that. LPDO. Queen d8. Rook d8. Take. Now we have this position to work with. Pragg has an outside pass pawn. So the funny thing is about this position is that if I saw this endgame and I was like, oh, Magnus is playing white, oh, he's going to win. You know? My doggy is snoring behind me. You can't hear it, but it's very adorable. He's running in his sleep. His, like, arms are twitching. So cute. Get a dog. It'll change your life. Seriously, like, it was so hard to raise this puppy. And now I would get a tattoo of him. Like of his paw or something. Because I love him so much. Anyway, you're not here for the sentimental stuff. King to g2. White is going to try to win this game by advancing his a-pawn, putting pressure on the pawns here. But let's not forget, if Magnus is playing black, Magnus is playing for a win whatever color he is playing. Like, rook c1, and now d5. And I got news for you. Like, if Pragg doesn't act, you know, if Pragg just, like, Magnus actually has more pressure here than Pragg. As long as he doesn't walk into any checks. Can't take because of the pin, but why is that? Like, why is black actually playing for a win? An outside pass pawn is only powerful if it can go forward. If it can't go forward, you're just going to kick out its defender and win the pawn. So right now, it's actually still a liability. Like, it's to be determined if this pawn is an asset or not. And Magnus has a very powerful central clump. If he trades one pair of rooks, the other one is going to laser beam here. So knight d7 kicks the rook out. And now we have a threat of a repetition, right? Like the players could repeat moves. But I got news for you. If that were to happen, Magnus would probably put his knight here and then bring his king and then advance with his pawns and try to win using his central armada. So Pragg undevelops to b1. Magnus centralizes his knight. And now here comes the pressure on the c-file. All Pragg can do is play against Magnus's weakness. Knight b1. The knight is hanging and so is the pawn behind it. The knight moves. The knight goes here, temporarily delaying the capture on c6. Because actually, if you rush with that capture, then my attack is much faster on these pawns. All right, so you got to be real careful doing all of this. So knight to d2, knight f3. Magnus goes here and tries to give away his pawn to damage Pragg's structure. But Pragg says, no, thank you. I'm not going to double my pawns. Rook a2, knight e3. And the players agree to a draw after 35 moves. Nothing to choose between them. 3 pawns, rook, knight. Pragg makes a draw with the white pieces against Magnus after a interesting opening idea, pawn to b4, but we don't get much from this one. It's all going to come down to tomorrow. Can Magnus Carlsen defeat Pragg with the white pieces to win the World Cup, or will they make another draw and go to a tiebreak? Or will Pragg win? Pragg could win if Magnus overextends. I'll see you tomorrow. Get out of here.